Hello, good evening, and welcome to the British Grand Prix. This is Invictus Racing League No Assist Championship. My name is Gareth, otherwise known as Captain Stiff. You can find me in the F3 League on Wednesday nights. And yes, welcome to Silverstone. Welcome to the home of British motorsport here at the glorious Silverstone circuit on the border of Northamptonshire and Oxfordshire, in just around 40 minutes north of London. Along with Italy, the only country have held an official Formula One race since the 1950 season, and the Grand Prix have been moved across around Silverstone, Donington, Brands Hatch, across the time here in the time on the F1 calendar. And welcome to everyone watching the stream tonight. Feel free to drop in. I am reading the comments, reading the feed as it comes along, so feel free to drop any comments in as the race progresses. As we see, it's a beautiful blue sky here. Hopefully getting the weather report from the guys very shortly to find out just how the race is going on. We know just how tricky conditions are in the wet around here and how interchangeable the weather conditions can be for the British Grand Prix, your typical British weather, as they would say. 18 turns, around 5.8 kilometres, that's 3.6 miles, the fourth longest circuit on the F1 calendar. Cars at full throttle for around 66% of lap. We'll just go on board with Tony. He's the one who's going to be heading out on board, and just check out there. And so 66% full throttle for the circuit, which has been much altered since its initial race here in 1950. Of course, the track was redesigned for the 2010 edition of the race, with the one of the bridge part of the circuit was taken out, which is a bit of a shame. It tended to be one of my favourite parts, but we do now have this arena section as Tony's going through now, through the village and the loop section down onto the Wellington Straight. It's going to be 48 gear changes per lap. That's around 1620 over the race distance for the guys today. And Silverstone actually has the longest pit lane on the F1 calendar, so the guys here will have to take into consideration the time that it's going to take to pit, obviously negating it with possibly a slightly faster in lap and a blitzing out lap. So yeah, the guys here getting it slowed down in time. Of course, you do come straight off of the final corner of Vale down into the pit lane, so it's very, very tricky for these guys to get it slowed down. Sometimes you're going to be right on the limit if you're going to be. Also got yellow in sector 3. There might just be a car weaving side to side. We're on board with Tony White in the Ferraris. He heads down the Hangar Straight. Of course, a famous old World War II airfield. Silverstone still has the airfield on the inner part of the circuit. Can be seen from the helicopter view sometimes. Tony White comes around the final few corners. This is Club Corner, Club 1 and Club 2. You've got to get a really good launch out of Club 2 straight down this very short start finish line, since we had the redevelopment in 2010, in to Abbey, straight down, kick it round into the farm curb, into the village corner. Now it's time to go around the loop, and he does it quite nicely, stays nicely on, just about lifts ever so slightly on the exit. DRS wide open, of course, 2 DRS zones here, one down the Wellington Straight as Tony's on, and then one down the Hangar Straight towards the second half of the lap, down towards just as you start sector 3. Now we enter the old start finish line, down, as you see there, the grid positionings as we come down to one of the most famous corners on the F1 calendar. That is Copse Corner, flat out for these guys, hopefully, as they swing round that very, very, very fast corner into one of the most famous complexes of corners on any circuit anywhere in the world, and that's Maggots and Beckett's, into Chapel, launch it all the way down the Hangar Straight. Now we're going to get down to Stowe, brake just nicely on inside, kiss the apex, run out a little bit wide, you've got room for Vale, and now it's time to get it slowed down just in time, but big lock up there for Tony as he goes round into Club 1, into Club 2. Joel sets the first time over 1:29.3, and what does Tony do? Tony comes across the line with a 1:28.5, absolute hammer time of a lap there for Tony Y in the Ferrari, and Renner 9 goes across the line with a 1:28.6, tenth of a second behind Tony, as Scott now goes on the second row of the grid in third with a 1:29.2. He's immediately replaced by Delange 93 with 1:28.7. So the guys quite close up by the looks of it at the moment, as we see Humberstone in the McLaren 1:28.888. All the eights there for the McLaren of Humberstone, as we'll go on board with Chill Nyland, who's coming into the club section now. Great camera view there, and you can see the G-force going through Chill's helmet as he comes across the line, puts in 7th as a 1:29.5 for the Dutchman, as Malk out on board on the super, or the hard tyre, it looks like the blue walled hard tyre. We don't tend to see it anywhere on the calendar too much. Silverstone's one of the only circuits we tend to run it, and he's pulled off to the side, so bailed out the lap by the looks of it. So yeah, Malk in the Mercedes tonight on those blue walled hard tyres as he enters Maggots and Beckett's, so possibly another warm-up lap for the Mercedes driver, who did very nicely last week to qualify on pole position in Italy. Unfortunately couldn't transfer that over to race pace, and it did find himself falling way down the order, and unfortunately it ended with a non-finish after being caught up in a really unfortunate accident on lap 2, I believe it was, for Malk. So Malk definitely still looking to get his season started as he goes across the line. You see, yeah, so it will be another, that was almost a slight installation lap there for Malk, as he now, you can see the Mercedes driver as he comes into the village corner, round the loop. He's going to come up to it. Feels like one long corner here. It's not that much of a time to straighten up your car as you go in towards Aintree. This is Aintree here down the Wellington Straight. Open up that DRS. And yeah, nicely done there for Malk as he comes in, and obviously will be slightly slower on the harder compounder tyres, but we'll see if he can make a relatively competitive lap on these blue wall tyres. It gets a little bit sideways coming out of Luffield there as he goes down the old start finish line, down the National Pit Straight into Copse Corner, lifts ever so slightly there as he comes through. And Speed Queen currently goes top with 1:28.2. So Speed Queen, after her win last week in Monza, back to the top of the standings with an absolutely cracking lap there, 0.3 of a second faster than Tony Y in the Ferrari power. So the Force India Speed Queen already looking pretty imposing today as Malk comes down round Stowe Corner, slight kink at Vale, and he's going to come round into Club, get it slowed down, doesn't lock up the brakes, not what you want at all. So it comes round Club 2. We're going to see camera from the line as just he goes across, and Malk does a 1:30.7, so 1.2 seconds slower. So not the fastest lap there for Malk. He will be looking at going out on a softer compounder tyre later on in the session, and trying to set himself. You can see 13 guys in the lobby tonight, so there's definitely a chance of points for these guys here. And thanks to everyone for joining the stream. Feel free to drop any comments in, talk between yourselves, guys, as I always like to see everyone getting involved and engaged in the stream. So if you've got any questions for me, if there's anything you'd like to see, or if there's anything you'd like to talk about, feel free to get involved. It's always good to hear from you. We'll go on board with Mike, who's out in the Ferrari, coming down, starting the lap round Abbey, into Farm and into Village, getting it slowed down nicely. Mike should have an advantage around here. This Ferrari power should pull him around this circuit pretty nicely. The problems with the circuit though is it has got incredibly high tyre wear, and unfortunately that's due to the fact there's so many fast and high speed corners. So the guys are going to be really careful when it comes to tyre wear, really careful when it comes to tyre temperatures. As you see Malk there, or Mike there, sorry, almost looking like he forgot where the pit lane was, and that's the old pit lane. You don't want to be buried inside there. You'll just find yourself a load of shocked marshals waiting for you to come directly towards them. It looks like Mike have to bail out of that one. So we'll go on board with Nicky 9095 in Force India, coming down through Stowe. Looking like Nicky might be finishing up on his lap, coming into club corner. Kiss the apex on both sides, run out slightly wide, don't go over that sausage curb, that got put there to stop guys going too wide, and Nicky goes onto the first row of the grid with a 1:28.2, fractionally slower than Speed Queen. So the two Force Indias currently sitting 1 and 2 at the top of the standings. So they've really, Otmar Snafnauer will be absolutely delighted with his drivers there, as both of them put themselves right at the top of the standings. Tony out in the Ferrari once again after that 28.5. Coming up to Maggots and Beckett's, you can see just how it's a little bit of a lift through the first section of Maggots. This is where it can be really crucial. You don't want to lose it coming out the second section of Beckett's and into Chapel. It's crucial that you get that corner right, because it sets you perfectly up for this hanger straight with the DRS down into Stowe. It's really, really important that you get that last section of Maggots and Beckett's right, and it's also incredibly easy to run ever so slightly wide as Tony comes round the second corner of club, and he's going to cross the line, and he goes top. A 1:28 flat for the Ferrari, an absolute barnstorm of a lap there for the Ferrari driver, and he'll be delighted with that. It pushes Speed Queen and Nicky down to second and third, and Speed Queen currently sitting in the pit lane. Nicky looking like he may be on an in lap. So there'll definitely still be guys out on circuit. We'll just quickly put up the lap data for you. Yeah, so Renner 9 bailing out that lap on the medium tyres. Delange is out on circuit currently. Scott goes into 4th position, second row of the grid currently with 1:28.5. Still time to find for Scott, as these guys here, the soft, obviously the softest compounder tyre that we have brought with us today. We've got the hards, the mediums and the softs, so the yellow wall tyres will be the softest compound. It shows you just how much the tyre wear can affect the guys around here. Delange coming down to end his lap, getting it slowed down pretty nicely for club there. Club 1 into club 2, doesn't run over, doesn't lose any time, and he's going to cross the line, and Delange takes pole by what looks like about just under a tenth of a second maybe. So Delange currently sitting top in the Haas. Tony Y is second with that 1:28 flat. Speed Queen and Nicky pushed down to third and fourth, so that's pushed everyone back down the order. So drivers like Joel, drivers like SJD, Humbostone, Chiln Island definitely need to pull something out of the bag if they're going to attack these guys. We're not one like Delange, the first guy into the 1:27, so absolute cracking lap there as Schofield. Yeah, stunning lap it really was. To get into the 1:27s in the Haas car was a pretty darn impressive lap here for the Dutch driver. As he pulls to the side, both those Haas cars coming down through Copse Corner here. Looks like both are on a in lap, so we will just quickly go out and sit on board with someone else that may be on lap. Joel looks like he may be on a flyer. Maybe not, it doesn't sound like he's on full power as we go down through Copse Corner here. Very the track abundant with overtaking opportunities around here. You can find yourself making moves through pretty much every single sector. We've seen moves into Copse Corner, of course. If the two guys are respectful to each other, we know it can be done. You can make moves into Stowe. We've seen several moves into Stowe over the last few seasons of racing here at Silverstone with Invictus Racing League. Equally down into Vale Club, there's several opportunities to overtake, and into obviously out the DRS zones down at the end of the Wellington Straight into Brooklands and around Luffield, especially in the first lap, as we see Joel there bailing out of that second lap there in the McLaren. Malk's out on board now. He's going for he's gone down one notch of the tyre, and he's now gone from the hard tyre to the medium tyre, so still won't be as fast as the rest of the guys, but we'll see if he can set a competitive time. Obviously got that Mercedes power to draw from. Now these guys of course are R13, so the top 10 will be starting on the tyres they set the fastest lap on, and the last 3 will have tyre choice when it comes to the race. And we know drivers like Mike like to give themselves a little bit of a choice when it comes to race time. So don't be surprised if we see Mike sitting towards the rear end of the grid and giving himself an option when it comes to the race later on in the session, as we count down under 4 minutes to go. The first 14 minutes have flown by. He's got a yellow in sector 2. We'll stay on board with Malk as he heads into the club section. He's going to come around the final corner, crosses the line, and Malk moves up into 6th position. It's a 1:28.604 on the medium tyre, so great that there from Malk in the Mercedes as he runs over grass. That's not going to help those medium tyres with their tyre wear at all. As we see, it doesn't look like there's anyone out on circuit. Mike is out on circuit at the moment, so we'll sit on board with him. He's coming around to Stowe now. Obviously the blue walled hard tyre on at the moment, so won't be the most competitive, and Mike bails out of that one as well. So installation lap on the hards just to see what the pace is like. Obviously decided against it, so we'll move up, and we're now on board with SJD 1988, a race winner already this season. So SJD will be looking at making a push towards the front. SJD, of course, picking up that race victory in France during the really quite awful weather conditions. And the Renault driver will be hoping for a slightly drier race. Hopefully be able to get a weather report from the guys in the paddock before the race. We'll go through last race quickly. So Speed Queen took the race victory out in Monza, and she was followed home by Scott. That's Boy Better Know SB. He came in second after missing the previous round, so Scott will be very glad to be back on the podium. And unfortunately, Scopefielder took third position, who can't be with us tonight. So it's a shame to not have you here, Scope. But obviously, taking another great result there for Scopefielder, as he's already picked up 3 podiums this season with a 3rd place in Australia and in Italy, and a race victory in Bahrain. So Scopefielder definitely one to watch come towards the end of the season. And Joel is starting to claw back positions in the championship, up to 25 points in the championship. After a couple of decent results, he picked up 2nd place in France and a 4th place in Italy. So after a slow start to the season, Joel V520 slowly getting back into the groove, as we see Nikki 9055 is now out on track. SJD's moved up into 5th position in the Renault. Nicky currently coming down towards Copse Corner here in the Force India, looking at putting himself back onto the front row of the grid, possibly provisional pole with almost 1 minute left in the session. So there's definitely a chance for everyone to be improving. You can see the top 3 are out on their outlaps at the moment. Oh, slightly wide there for Nicky on the exit there of Beckett's Corner and into Chapel. It's not going to give him optimum running down towards Stowe. Didn't have the DRS open at all, so possibly a complete bailout of that lap for Nicky. Yeah, you can hear it looks like he's going to be going again, so those 1 lap scrubbed up soft tyres might not be as fast as they were in the previous lap, but it's all about getting a good exit out this final corner here, setting yourself up for one more go. So it's going to be one last hurrah for Nicky 9095 if he's going to make it anywhere towards the front of the grid come the race. As Malk retires from the session, there's a yellow in sector 3. That may be for the stricken Mercedes. Humbo Stone currently sitting in 9th position. Humbo Stone, another one who's done very well at the start of the season, currently sitting on 28 points in the championship with 2 second place finishes in Australia and Bahrain. Hasn't quite maintained that speed as he's picked up a 5th position in Hungary and a 9th position in France, and unfortunately wasn't with us last week in Monza. So Humberstone will be looking at trying to pull that McLaren round the circuit and picking up some more valuable points, and we'll just stick with him. We know that he's got pace around here. Tony's not going any quicker. He's currently in 2nd position. He's crossed the line. Checkered flag is out for the guys here, so this is it. It's the do or die for everyone out on circuit. Oh, Humberstone running slightly wide on the exit of Beckett's there as he comes down the hanger straight. DRS wide open. And we see Speed Queen looks like she may be just in front of Humberstone, so we'll just as that's the Force India bailing out of that. So was that Speed Queen or was that Nikki? We'll see in 2 seconds. It looks like it was Nikki, so Speed Queen definitely still out there. Humberstone's going to come around the final corner across the line, and he improves to 7th position. Speed Queen comes across the line and doesn't improve. And Delange is out on track. He's going to cross the line, and he doesn't go any quicker either. So Delange looks like he's going to take pole position. The only person out on the circuit that could have gone any quicker was Chill Island, and he doesn't. Chill goes into 10th place as Mike retires from the session, and that is all she wrote for qualifying. And Delange 93 takes pole position with Tony Y in 2nd place. And it was an absolutely perfect lap there for Delange 93 with a really just beautifully executed move in the Haas around Silverstone. Just locked up like the perfect lap around this track, and he's put it on pole with a really decent time. He'll be absolutely delighted with that. We'll quickly go through the results here as they flash up on screen. Try and do them as quickly as possible. It always does catch me out how quickly it goes. And Delange 93 in the Haas picks up pole position with a 1:27.989. Tony Y in the Ferrari picks up 2nd. Speed Queen and Nikki 995 pick up the 2nd row of the grid in 3rd and 4th. Scott is in 5th with SJD 1988 in 6th. Humberstone in 7th with Malk in 8th. Renner 9 in 9th. Chill Island in 10th with Joel V520 in 11th. Mama Fisher and Mike are in 12th and 13th with Mike without Mike setting a time. So once again, Mike starting from the rear end of the grid, giving himself perfect opportunity to attack the guys on fresh tyres come the race. Of course, guys, it's not the only thing for Invictus this week. We do have the Performance Leagues 1 and 2 tomorrow night, Tuesday night. Feel free to join the streams tomorrow night for realistic performance. And then on Wednesday night you have the equal performance leagues, and that's F1, F2 and F3. And I do implore you, if you have not watched any of our equal performance races, to make sure you catch one of the streams either on Twitch or after they are uploaded to YouTube at Invictus RL on YouTube. Catch up and see how fun and exciting they are. They really are some of the best esports racing for Formula 1 you'll find anywhere on PS4. And yeah, of course, you'll find me and on F3 as we see the guys readying up pretty quickly as they go out onto their formation lap. So it was a pretty quickly ready up there for the guys there. We'll see if that's affected anyone. They would have done pretty... Ooh, running wide there for the Ferrari down into the first corner at Abbey. We'll just quickly check on, as you can see there. So the guys that did start at the rear end of the grid, it's soft compound tyres for Joel, but Mama Fisher and Mike both going for the medium, so looking at going long in a first stint for the Renault of Mama Fisher and the Ferrari of Mike SI. So the two possibly looking at a slightly longer first stint, and possibly with one stop. We know that one stop works pretty nicely around here, but you can make a two work if you're slightly more aggressive, and definitely if you've got the pace to come in and set two sets of the soft tyre and then maybe onto a medium. You've just got to make sure that you're absolutely on the limit for the rest of the race. Delange leading the field round in the Haas. Gunther Steiner will be absolutely delighted with it, putting himself with the best opportunity going down into Abbey for turn one. It's going to be the pole position is on the left hand side of the grid, which is the clean side, of course. Gives you the racing line down into turn one, which the guys should be taking flat out, seeing as it looks like we've got a blue and beautiful sky day here at Silverstone. So doesn't look like we have the threat from rain at all. So that would be great news for the guys here that knew that essentially maggots and Beckett's in the rain is sometimes lethal, and you know just how difficult it is for them in the dry. Multiply that by 10 if it was a wet conditioned race. But it looks like they may have had a spot of luck here for the guys as Delange brings them round and slowly starts to find his grid position. As the guys follow him behind, you see the Ferrari peeling off, going to the inside next to the pit wall. And we should, with the Pink Panthers and Force Indias of Nikki and Speed Queen sitting behind. Everyone filing into their grid positions pretty nicely, and we will await the lights momentarily. Held on the lights for too long. We have 2, 3, 4, 5 red lights held for what feels like an eternity, and they are off. They're off, and Delange gets... Oh, he's got a poor start, and that's going to allow the Force India's going to swarm all over the first two as they go down to the first corner. Tony looks like... So that's one of the Force Indias has gone off, and it looks like Nikki 9095 may have... Oh, was that contact or not? We can't tell from here. And Scott is moved up into first position if he goes down the inside of Tony, going into the village corner, into farm. It's going to come out of Aintree, going down onto the Wellington Straight for the first time. And it's Tony Y that takes the lead ahead of Scott. Humbostone moving up into third position. A great start for the McLaren drivers. Delange, he's moved down into fourth. Really poor start there for Delange, who just seemed to spin the wheels ever so slightly. Possibly got a little bit too excited off the start-finish line. Renner 9 is sitting behind him with Joel V520 all over the back of the Mercedes. Going down, as we see there, the race leaders all within a few tenths of a second of each other as we head down Copse Corner for the first time. And this is where it's going to get tricky. The first time ever, all these guys heading down towards Maggots and Beckett for the first time. We'll see, does everyone stay on the black stuff? It's very tricky when you're within the dirty air of the car in front. And Joel is going to be tucked up right behind the Mercedes as they head down towards Stowe for the first time. But obviously the Mercedes is going to have that bit more power going down. It's going to have to be a brave lunge from Joel. He thinks against it, decides that he's going to power slide around that corner. And we'll see here Speed Queen not getting the best of getaways as well. She's dropped down from third down to seventh. So the two Force Indias not having a great first lap at all will quickly go up on board with Scott, who's sitting in second place, sitting behind Tony Y, who's had a great getaway. These two breaking away from the rest of the field, 1.1 second, 1.2 seconds away from Humberstone in a McLaren in third position. So Tony currently leading the field away. Had another good qualifying for Tony after picking up second position in Italy last week. Of course, Tony was another one that didn't have the best of races, and Scott's going to be all down into Brooklands. He gets the move done. Tony doesn't fight him too hard, and Scott takes the lead in the Toro Rosso on lap 2. Tony Y is going to have to sit with him and try and follow that Toro Rosso down as they head down the old pit straight towards Copse Corner. It's already a 0.5 of a second lead, so we'll quickly swap down. We'll see just how much of a grouping we've got here, and Delange will be looking at clawing back. Oh, that was a force McLaren there with Joel, by the looks of it, that went majorly wide coming out of Copse Corner. We've got the yellow in sector 2. There's a car dropping down. It's Mama Fisher, by the looks of it, that may have dropped down. Delange will be hoping to be all over the back of this McLaren going down into Stowe. He needs to claw back. We know he's got the pace around here, so that poor start just spun the wheels ever so slightly, meant that the Force Indias, well, swamped the guys in the lead, but possibly the two collecting each other. We saw Nicky unfortunately sliding off into the infield at the exit of Farm Curve as Scott sets the fastest lap of 132.3, currently stretching a slight lead out over Tony Y up to 0.7 of a second at the moment. The guys not getting away from not getting away from the rest of the field at the moment. The top 5 split by about 3.5 seconds at the moment. So we'll quickly check on. Oh, we've got 0.3 of a second. You can see just how close everyone is behind. Down into on board with Joel V520, he's got Speed Queen for company all over the back of him at the moment. You don't want to have, that's the last person you want to have swarming over the back, and he runs wide on the exit of Luffield, and that's just going to play into Speed Queen's hand. She's going to, make the mistakes all you want, take some life out of those tyres. I'll just make the most of it. She can sit and save that battery, save a little bit of fuel if she wants. You can use the slipstream to your advantage at the moment, and just whip it up to overtake mode as you head onto the hangar straight and down into Stowe. But SJD also starting to give Speed Queen a little bit of fuss, going down the hanger straight. But these three are going to be super close as we head into Stowe, and they are. Oh, it's going to slightly wide for Renner 9 there. He's going to leave himself open for a lunge down the inside from Joel into Club. The two touch ever so slightly. Not enough to turn him around though, but oh, Joel really on the limit at the moment of what his car's got with, in regards to grip there. We've got a yellow in sector 2, still there. We'll see who that is. Nikki 9095. Oh, Speed Queen launches it down the inside, doesn't quite get the move stuck on Joel, and she's definitely looking racy. She wants to claw back some time. Speed Queen here sitting in 7th position, still looking at the rear end of that McLaren. She doesn't want to get too eager and put a move down somewhere where it won't be expected and possibly collect the rear end. You can't afford to lose any front aero around this circuit. It's so aero critical, especially around Maggots and Beckett's and the quick direction changes. So these guys here, they've got to make sure that they're not they're not picking up, not tripping up over each other. And as you see, look like SJD there running wide. Speed Queen, she's going to be close behind us. Joel picks up a 3-second time penalty running wide. That's multiple warnings. So yes, you saw him run ever so slightly wide there on the entry of Maggots there. Very easy to do. DRS is activated for the guys now, so they will all have a DRS on each other. Speed Queen's going to launch it down the inside of Stowe's. Joel going to be able to hang it around the outside. These two are going to go side by side around Stowe. Joel maintains the position, did go off track surface, and Speed Queen with a beautiful switchback there. But oh, you still see he's still there. Joel's not giving up at all, and these two, they battled all last season when Speed Queen was racing against Joel, and down into Avi, and it's really brave stuff here from the Force India. In fact, we'll quickly go on board with Speed Queen as she finally gets the move done past Joel. 6th position. Joel behind, he's still there. Oh, they touch, and it's so unfortunate there. So unfortunate for Speed Queen. She'll be absolutely devastated with that. And Joel, unfortunately for him, will have to pick up possibly. We'll see if the stewards have anything to say about that. The two were side by side for so long, so really unfortunate there. Picked up Joel just as he came into contact with the Force India. Possibly she didn't know that he was so far alongside, and she took the racing line to go into the Aintree corner for the Wellington Straight, and unfortunately 2 into 1 doesn't go, and Speed Queen has now dropped down to 12th position, and she's got it all to do from back there. Malk starting to make a move at the moment, 7th position at the moment. He's going to be right up behind the Renault of SJD, heading down towards Stowe. Does he get the move done? He's going to be really close to it. He's going to be... he's not quite brave enough. They're going to go side by side. SJD running slightly wide on the exit of Stowe there. Malk could just bide his time. I think he knows he's got the pace advantage over the Renault in front. Of course, guys, if there is anything you'd like to see, any stats you'd like to see or anything like that, feel free to drop them into the comments. Let me know. More than happy to give you guys the best experience possible viewing, as we still, it's not the best camera angle here. Of course, the rear axle, rear suspension is a beautiful sight, but it doesn't quite give us the sight we want for that's SJD's Renault in front. There we go, that's much better as they go down the Weddington Straight into Brooklands. Malk not within DRS, then didn't have the flap open, so possibly losing a little bit of time on the farm section and through the loop. And we'll quickly check up with Delange, who's right up behind Humberstone now. So it's Delange and Humberstone. Delange, he's had a great or pretty consistent season so far. He picked up a podium in Hungary. He's picking up points all over the place at the moment. So even though he started on the pole, he will definitely be looking at pushing up further after moving down, not having the best start. Oh, he's going to be right out behind the McLaren. The McLaren moves to the centre of the track and he's going to block him off quite nicely there. Very good defensive driving, but he's going to be disadvantaged going through through Vale and into Club. They're going to go side by side. Humbo Stone's going to go wide through club, or Delange deciding not to send it up the inside. But, oh, you didn't see that at all. Renner 9, as cheeky as you like, just saw the advantage of Delange battling with Humbo Stone. Saw the fact that Delange had to lift ever so slightly, and he sent it up the inside, and Renner 9 moves himself up into 4th, and Delange moves down again, and that's not what he want at all. He saw 3rd, and that's all he was paying attention to. And unfortunately for him, Renner 9, just real ultimate opportunist, I believe would be the phrase there, is Delange now has to make the move down on 2 cars if he's looking at picking up another podium. And the battle for the lead is still going on between Scott and Tony, as Tony's sitting 0.3 of a second behind as we go into Copse Corner. The Ferrari Power versus the Toro Rosso. Oh, it's going to be dirty air here for Tony. He's not going to want to run. Not going to want to run wide. Sorry. It's all about the exit through Chapel here. He's going to get DRS on the Toro Rosso heading down the Hangar Straight. It looks like he might sail past the Toro Rosso if he's brave enough. Where does Scott put his car? Right in the middle. Make it as difficult for Tony as possible. And Scott doing very nicely there. Gets a little bit out of shape on the exit of Vale. And through club here, Tony's going to want to stay nice and tight. Don't push the car past its limits. You don't want to overheat the tyres too early. Still way ahead of the guys. 1.8 seconds, 1.9 seconds at the moment. So these two having their own separate battle to everyone else. Renner 9 has moved past Humbo Stone. So Renner 9 has moved up into 3rd position. Got the move past Humbo Stone in the McLaren. So Delange and Humbo Stone will reignite that battle. Back down the grid, you see Nicky 9095 is 0.1 of a second behind Joel V520, and the 2 Force Indias have both had excursions across the track today, where Nicky unfortunately on lap 1 at the 2nd corner, and Speed Queen after that contact with Joel, and Nicky sails down the inside of the McLaren heading down into Brooklands, gets the move done, and Joel looking possibly coming back in. He's going to be right in the rear gearbox and diffuser of that Force India, but looks like Nicky may have defended the corner well. It'll be a brave man that will go too wide down into Copse Corner, and I think against it. Oh, you see just how close to losing it Joel was there. Got all out of shape through Copse Corner, got caught on the curbing, and that just ever so slightly unsettled the car with the aero underneath it. And Joel V520 lucky there as Delange has moved up past Humbo Stone. So Delange finally gets the move done. Sorry, I missed that, guys, as Humbo Stone looking at coming back at him, going into the Cub Corner, and that looked like Malk and SJD having a battle behind. And Chill Nyland has moved up past Mike for 10th, and the two swap once again. So cracking battle for Chill as they swap once again. So Chill and Mike going side by side, wheel touching as we come around the 2nd sector of club, as we're going to go too wide into Abbey. Very respectful from the two. Don't see anyone banging wheels there. Mike's still on the inside of Chill as they go down. He's run deep, and that's going to allow Chill a slightly better racing line going through the loop. Mike's going to put his car right on the racing line, block off the Dutchman, but he's going to get DRS heading down the Wellington Straight as we go down towards Brooklands, and the Haas looks like he may possibly, no, he thinks against it. Mike in the Ferrari Power, possibly a little too much for the Haas. It's Chill Nyland can't get that move done. These two having a great battle, and unfortunately want to catch the battles are going on all over the circuit. We can see guys close to each other all over the place, and Speed Queen has come in and fitted the medium tyre, so an early stop there for Speed Queen, deciding to go onto the medium. So it's still a long way to take those mediums as Joel picks up a second 3-second time penalty. So Joel currently sitting on 6 seconds of time penalties at the end of the race, which will effectively drop him out of the points at the moment. So Joel not with the greatest start so far. He's picked up a lot of time penalties. Scott is the first one to blink out the top runners and drops into the pit lane. He's coming off the soft compound tyres. We'll see, does he go onto the hards or does he go onto the mediums? It is the, or possibly is even a second set of soft tyres for the Toro Rosso. would be a very interesting call. No, it's the medium tyres for the Toro Rosso, as SJD also comes in to the pit lane as well. Of course, longest pit lane on the F1 calendar. Very long entry, very long exit, and feeds right into the farm section, right into the farm curve. Chilton Island here still sitting behind Mike, now battling over 8th and 9th after Scott and SJD made their stops. The gaps between the drivers now starting to open up ever so slightly, around 1.1 seconds, 1.4, 1.4. So yeah, the guys starting to spread their wings ever so slightly. Obviously the tyres will start to go off, so we'll now start to see who's got the best tyre management when it comes to slightly wearing tyres. And Chill all over the back of Mike going down into Copse Corner. Lifted ever so slightly by the looks of it going around there, because he would have got caught in that dirty air. And this is where used tyres will tend to show their worst, is around Maggots and Beckett's, and you'll find yourself drifting ever so slightly wider and wider each lap, compromising your exit, compromising your entry to every corner. But you can't quite close up on the exit of Chapel there as they head down the hanger straight. And it's a pit stop for Tony. So Tony coming in as well. So that promotes Renner 9 to the race lead at the moment. And we'll see. Scott is going to come around Stowe Corner. How far or what has he done with this outlap? Has it been a decent outlap for him to allow him to take the lead back from Tony? These two, of course, will split barely, as we'll go on board with the Ferrari driver, who's leaving the pit lane now. It's going to be very close between the Ferrari and the Toro Rosso, and Scott's coming around Abbey now, but it's Tony that maintains, I believe, takes the lead ever so slightly. But you can see just how quick it was. Speed Queen sets the fastest lap of the race with 1:31.125 on the mediums, but these two are going to re-engage their battle, and Scott with a brilliant move down the inside there of Aintree. Brilliant move for the Toro Rosso, using those slightly warmer tyres. Tony, of course, hasn't quite had the chance of getting those medium tyres up to temperature yet. Scott, using the extra grip, sends it down the inside into Aintree. Absolutely exquisite move there for the Toro Rosso driver, who would not have been happy to see the Ferrari come out the pit lane in front of him, but essentially did exactly what he needed to do and got the move done, as he retakes the lead and can now start pushing ahead on this second stint on the medium compound tyres. Renner 9 and Humberstone both in as well. So the guys now that started on the softs, as Nicky also comes in, so the guys are all starting on the softs, all deciding 10 laps is pretty much all you can do on them. You can take the mediums for the rest of the race. Mama Fisher, of course, came in very early, put on the hards, as the two are going to battle. We've still got Scott and Tony going to battle into club, and Tony there having to get out of the throttle, realising there that he might have put a little bit too much love into that throttle pedal there. He didn't want to turn that Ferrari round on the entry of club, and the two just about clear Renner 9, who's going to be close behind as we head down. So Renner 9 is interjecting himself into this race battle for the lead at the moment, and equally Delange and Humberstone are starting to close up. So Scott and Tony's battle at the front, even though it was only over that about 2/3 of a lap to a lap, it started to invite the rest of the field into a battle for the lead. So it's definitely not over. And of course, guys, if you've got any predictions about what you think is going to go on, feel free to drop them in. Let us know. Do you think is it Scott that's got this to lose? Is Tony's Ferrari power going to make any difference? Equally, as Renner got enough to start catching up to the guys in front, but we know that Delange has got the pace around here. Is he going to look to get back towards the top? So many questions, and of course, feel free to let me know what you think is going to go on. As you see, Delange is going to get DRS on Renner 9, heading down the hanger straight down into Stowe. Majorly wide there for Renner. Went far too deep, and it's going to give Delange definitely an insight of where to possibly make a move on the next lap if he can't get it done this time around. Two going to go very close across the line as Chill Nyland is the last one to pit off of the soft tyres. And Chill will go on to the mediums as well. So the entire field, bar Mama Fisher, on the medium compounded tyres. Mike and Malk currently sitting at the top. After pitting much earlier, starting on the medium, sorry. So on a much different strategy to the rest of the field. We'll just quickly pick up the race lead battle at the moment once again between Tony Y and Boy Better Know SB. Tony sitting 0.8 of a second behind Scott as they head down towards Copse Corner. Definitely looking at possibly saving a little bit of life in these tyres at the moment. Just make sure that you've got enough to give us. We've got a yellow in sector 2. It's left very quickly as Nicky picks up a 3-second time penalty. So not a great day for Nicky 9095. After starting pretty promisingly in 4th position, he's dropped down to 8th, and it looks like it was Delange who's dropping all the way down to 10th position at the moment, and so it looks like Delange that may be the one that caused the yellow flags in sector 2 as the pole sitter falls down to 10th. He's dropped down to 11th. So is there potential? We'll just quickly check. Is there? Yeah, it must be front wing damage for the Haas driver. Oh, really unfortunate there for Delange's. Oh, you see Nicky and Speed Queen starting to hound the rear end of SJD in the Renault. Nicky's going to almost rear end the yellow and black Renault. But the two Force Indias, both of them, will not be in the best of moods. Tony Y picks up a 3-second time penalty. Disaster there for Tony as he chases down Scott. And these two all over the back of the Renault, and SJD will just feel like he's seeing double when he looks in his mirrors. There'll be one Force India on either side of his car, and the two battling each other as we head down the old pit straight towards Copse Corner. Take it flat, and he does. Nicky's the one that suffers there, so slightly ran out a little bit wider than he would have wanted. But it's all about keeping it nice and tight through Maggots and Beckett. Getting it as Joel picks up another time penalty. So Joel is not going to be in the steward's best books at all come the end of the race. We might have to go up and see Charlie and just explain why he's deciding to, or as we see Nicky try and send it up the inside going into Stowe. Does he get the move done? He looks like he might. Now does the Renault try and come back into club section? No, he doesn't. So Nicky moving up into 7th place ahead of SJD. Speed Queen is now going to be looking at that and hoping that he potentially that she could potentially get the move done as soon as possible, try and clear this Renault and push on. We know that after picking out that race win in Monza, she was delighted that to finally get back up where she thinks she belongs, but currently languishing down in 9th position is not what she wants at all. She definitely had a bit of a rocky start to the season for her standards, picking up a couple of poor a non-finish in Australia and mid-table finishes in Bahrain, Hungary and France, a couple of 5ths and 4ths, but obviously being back at the top of the podium in Italy was where she was hoping to be. She's currently second in the overall table on 31 points. Only Scopefielder on 35 sits above her, but with Scott sitting 1 point behind on 30 points, he's looking the most likely at the moment to take the race victory, because even though Tony White currently 6/10 of a second behind him, Tony of course has got that 3-second time penalty, so as long as Scott can keep it on the black stuff, I say that Tony getting closer will quickly just catch up to the guys in for the race effective race lead at the moment, as Malk, the first one out of Malcolm Mike to come off of the medium tyres and onto the soft tyres. So 16 laps on the mediums there for Malk as he now comes out of the pit lane onto the soft, so he'll be slightly quicker than the guys on the mediums, so we'll look to see if Malk can do anything about it come the end of the race. Tony half a second behind Scott as we head down the Wellington Straight. Doesn't look like he's going to be close enough to get moved down into Brooklands just yet. Might have to be a tenth or two closer if he's going to get a move down in the inside of Scott. We know just how much Scott will fight his position. He puts his car all in the right places when it comes to defending. He knows what to do, how to keep the guys behind. And unfortunately, Tony is going to have to bring out something pretty epic if he's going to get past the Toro Rosso and stretch out a 3-second lead at the moment. And this is essentially the race battle for the victory at the moment, as we see Tony Y and Scott sitting 0.6 of a second apart. Mike's currently leading the race after starting on the medium tyres, but he will have to require a pit stop. So the Toro Rosso and the Ferrari have started to stretch out a lead as well. So Renault 9, after coming out of his pit stop and being around 6 or 7 tenths of a second away from these guys, has dropped back to 3 seconds as Malcolm does give up the race lead after coming in for his one and only pit stop. So the Ferrari driver of Mike SI does come out, and Malk will actually be promoted up into 5th position. So Malk running nicely up in 5th at the moment, and on those brand new soft tyres will definitely be quick come this first start of the stint, and he'll looking at pushing up towards Humberstone in the McLaren, and even Renault 9 might come under threat from Malk come the definitely the first part of this stint. Oh, Tony locking up that front left as we come into Brooklands. So yeah, Schofield and Malk might get a podium, and you're definitely right. If he can keep it consistent, and that's been Malk's problem over this season. He definitely has the pace, he just needs the consistency, he just needs the luck really. He's not quite been where he's wanted to be all season, and he could really do with a positive result. Malk currently sitting on 5 points for the season, only a couple of 9th place finishes and 10th place finishes at the moment, as Joel picks up another time penalty. So really Tony trying to go wide around the outside of Stowe. It would be a very brave move. He's still up the inside of Scott coming into club. Does he get the move done? We know that Scott's going to try and hang it around the outside. Oh, Scott just about keeps the move there. Tony really starting to pester the rear end of that Toro Rosso. Now he's going to try and go down the inside of Abbey. Be a brave move. It's almost like Cop's Corner, but on a slightly smaller scale. Sitting behind us, Malk does the fastest lap with 1:36, I believe that was 0.2. So Malk definitely on a charge. He's 0.2 of a second behind Humberstone at the moment, so we'll quickly catch up with Malk there, as he's now he's clawed right up to the rear end of Humberstone. He's made up almost 1.8 seconds on the McLaren. He's using that Mercedes power to blast past the McLaren down the Wellington Straight. Nothing that Humberstone could do about it whatsoever, and Malk is definitely on a charge. And yeah, Renault 9 in the sister Mercedes isn't that far up the road, and of course, even though they've got the same power out the back of that car, it's that yellow walled, grippier and soft compound tyre that Malk is on that will give him the edge, especially for this first stint. It's all about how we can manage this tyre deg through this first half of the stint to make sure he doesn't take too much life, as Mike retires from the race, and it's a yellow in sector 1, so it looks like Mike might have gone off either in either a pit lane retirement or on circuit. So unfortunately there for Mike, who retires from the race, and another disappointing race for Mike once again. As we see Malk here, he's now close to 1 second, so he's really on it. Malk has definitely had his Weetabix this morning, and he'll be right on the rear end of Renault 9 come the end of this lap by the looks of it. He's down to 0.7 of a second, and he's going to be well within DRS, heading as Speed Queen picks up a 3-second time penalty. Yeah, Malk is going to be well within DRS, and look and head just who you can see ahead of that, and that's the Ferrari of Tony Y. So do not count out Malk for a charge to push up. You can see just how close they are. So he's going to look down the inside, and Renault 9 does not challenge him whatsoever. He just lets him through. The sister, or possibly a Toto Wolff swap there, swapping his drivers, realising that Malk has got the best opportunity at pushing for the race win. And yeah, so Schofield, Mount gained 4 seconds on the lead in the last couple of days. He's absolutely flying at the moment out in that Mercedes, locking up lap upon lap upon lap, and he's going to cruise up to the rear end of Tony using this soft compound tyres. And this is where you're really willing on, as Renault 9 picks up a 3-second time penalty, so that's going to drop him behind Humbo Stone, who's not that far behind. But Mount really putting himself into a race victory conversation at the moment. Scott's starting to move up a second ahead at the moment, so Scott, he's definitely got a little bit of a buffer to the charging Mercedes, but we'll see how much life has Malk taken out of these tyres in the early part of this stint. 4 laps on those softs compared to 9 and 10 laps on the mediums, so the mediums will be sort of within their working temperature now. They will be. It's Tony White going all out of shape, going into the village corner there and through farm into the loop, and he's going to have a Mercedes for company all over the rear end of him going down, and it's going to be DRS. Is he brave enough to go down into Brooklands? No, he's not. He's going to stay behind, but Tony's gone wide once again, has allowed Mount through, and Mount goes past. Mercedes moves up into second position, 2 seconds behind the race leader at the moment. So Mount absolutely on fire tonight, and he's really doing. It's really good to see him having such a positive race, because we all wished it all season. Renault 9 way wide going through Cops there. And Malk just needs to keep it on the black stuff, keep it pointing in the right direction. And it's a 3-second time penalty for the race leader. And I don't believe I've seen one flash up for Malk so far this race. So at the moment, Malk would take the race victory in the Mercedes. Toro Rosso of Boy Better Know SB leading the race at the moment by 1.7 seconds to the Mercedes of Malk. But Malk has still got Tony all over the rear end of him. So Tony, after that slight mistake on the last lap through the loop section, he's now starting to close up to the rear end of Malk. So Malk having to look possibly a little bit more defensively over this lap compared to just all-out attack like we've seen so far. But equally, Tony Y starting to he's going to have to look in his mirrors as well, because Renault 9 isn't giving up at all. Renault definitely thinking that a podium is well within his grasp. And it's the battle for second, third and fourth in the moment that's closest on circuit. And it's 1.4 seconds at the moment for the lead. 1.2 seconds, so he's taking around about 1.5 tenths out of him per sector at the moment. Malk here heading down towards Copse Corner. Used that power of the Mercedes against Toro Rosso. Heading through Copse, it's 1.211, 1.208, so it's coming down fractionally. So it's all about the margins, about as soon, especially, he's going to go a little bit wide coming out of Chapel, but he started to bridge that gap now between him and Tony. Tony possibly just within DRS of him. Yeah, he was just within DRS of Malk, so Tony being able to fend off the sister Mercedes of Renault 9 behind with the DRS, but it's 1.4, so lost a little bit of time going down the hanger straight. So Scott leading, Malk in second with Tony White third, Renault 9 fourth. Then you've got Nicky 9095 who's come back to fifth after that early spin. So great recovery drive for Nicky so far. He has got Humbo Stone for company, not that far behind. Speed Queen not having the best race at all. Unfortunately, after dropping down the order after a good start, but then getting pushed around on lap 1. She got into a little bit of contact with Joel, and that spun her around on the exit of the loop corner at turn 4. And unfortunately, she's only managed to recover back to 7th position. She sits a second behind Humbo Stone's McLaren in 6th at the moment, so possibly a move up into the top 6 on the cards for her, but definitely not where she was hoping to be. SJD in 8th position with Joel V520 having essentially making up his own track today by the sounds of it, with the amount of times that he's picked up a penalty. So Joel definitely not enjoying this track layout as it is at the moment. Chiltern Island in the last points paying position in 10th with Delange really unfortunately down in 11th. Delange obviously picked up, he's had to come in for a second stop after what looks like possibly a spin in sector 2 dropped him out of 4th position, so the pole sitter currently sitting outside of the points in a really unfortunate race so far for Delange, and it was looking incredibly promising come the start. He did drop down to 4th from the start, but yeah, Delange will not be happy about how his race has gone so far. Of course, we'll hear in the paddock after the race how the guys think it went, but you can't imagine the two touch drivers of Chiltern Island and Delange sitting in 10th and 11th at the moment will be particularly happy about where their race has gone so far. And the last of the runners we've got at the moment is Mama Fisher, who's out there on 19 lap long hard compound tyres as Mama Fisher picks up a 3-second time penalty. Renner 9 now 0.3 of a second behind Tony Weiss, so the Mercedes now starting to hound the back of the Ferrari, starting to invite Nicky into the party. Oh, it's going to be all over the back of him. Are they going to go side by side into Cops? It's going to be incredibly brave from Renner 9. They're going to go side by side. They bang wheels, but they just about get it together. And Tony and Renner on the limit. Oh, he just allows the Ferrari to flick back through, and these two, Renner 9's going to be all out of shape, and that's going to allow Nicky behind. You see all three of them now. They're going to get going to have DRS. It's going to negate the speed of each other, so you don't have to worry. Really, it was all on power there. So it's the Ferrari and Mercedes and the Force India. We know that all three of them the strongest down in a straight line. As Nicky picks up a 3-second time penalty running wide at Stowe. We've seen him do that a few times this race so far. So we know these guys here all have time penalties. It's all about essentially getting less than your opponent. Malk now just under a second behind Scott coming into the farm section through the loop, so he's going to get DRS. As you see, the Force Injuries turn Renner and 9 around, and Renner will be absolutely it's right in the middle, and Nicky parks it on the track surface in a respectful way to allow him past, but almost was a rolling roadblock, and Renner's tyres are going to be all over the place for the next few corners. So Nicky just a little bit too hot down into the village corner, turned around there, Renner, and Renner will be absolutely disgusted with that. Well, I say that, we'll go on board, we'll talk about it in a minute. What do we have here? It's a battle for the lead between Scott and Malk. Malk's had an absolute... Did he turn down the engine for the last few laps? Because he was running about 1.2 seconds, and now he's 0.4 of a second behind for the race victory with 2 laps left to run after this. So with 2 laps left, Malk is going to be within touching distance of the race win. And his heart will be beating through his chest, and we are all hoping that everything goes well for the Mercedes driver. We've seen some guys tangle up together. Don't do anything stupid. As you see him just about get it slowed down for Club. You didn't want the commentator's curse there at all. And Malk on the living edge as he throws that Mercedes round Club 2 down into Abbey. Don't pick up a time penalty now. Toto will have his head in his hands, and he's going to be really, really close coming out of Aintree and onto the Wellington Straight. So this possibly is his best opportunity. Looks like Scott got a slightly better exit out of that corner. So Scott got a slightly nicer exit out of Aintree there, meaning that he could defend down the Wellington Straight. 0.6 of a second at the moment between Malk and Scott for the race win. Malk just has to bide his time, not make a rash move. He can just sit there and look to get a perfect exit out of Chapel after this complex of Maggots and Beckett's. Scott's tyres will be just about coming towards the point where they start to lose a little bit of temperature, lose a little bit of life. Equally, Malk's tyres will be sort of on the edge as well. They'll be coming towards the end of their sort of working life when they start to slide ever so slightly. 0.3 of a second, and we're coming on to the final lap of the race. We know that Scott has got a time penalty. We're not 100% sure if Malk has, so of course he won't know that and they're going to go across the line for one more time. The Toro Rosso of Scott leads. Malk is in second, leads him by 0.3 of a second. Malk just needs to keep calm, keep his head behind the Toro Rosso. Just, if he wants to get it done on track, he needs to get a good exit out of the loop here, out of Aintree. It's up to 0.5 of a second, so Scott does have a better run through that corner. DRS is open, but it's not going to be good enough for Malk heading down into Brooklands. He's going to have to stay tight behind him. Possibly the hanger straight will be his next best opportunity of getting a move done. You're not going to get a move done, especially not the last lap. You wouldn't risk it down into Copse Corner. And Scott is going to lead the cars down past the famous Copse Corner for the final time this race, past the fans that are screaming for these two. A last lap battle for the race victory is what we always like to see in Invictus, going down to the wire. And these two very nicely, neither one of them wanting to get one tyre wrong as Renner picks up another 3-second time penalty. Malk's going to be really close this time. Scott's going to put his car right in the middle of the track surface. This is a cutback. Let's see if Malk goes wide. Does he try and get a switch back on him? He's going to go side by side into club. These two are going to really battle for it going across the line. It looks like Scott might take it on track. We'll see if they flick over on penalties. And it is a race victory for Malk in the Mercedes, and he will be absolutely delighted with that. So really unfortunate there for Scott, who you do feel for him, because he drove a really good race, battling the entire time with Tony Wyatt and with Malk, and unfortunately drops down to second place on penalties. But it is Malk, that F1 WWFC07, that picks up his first race victory of the season, and I believe his first race victory in no assists for a very long time, at least over 2 seasons. Tony comes in third in the Ferrari, and he'll be happy to come in with a podium position. Humbostone comes in fourth, and Speed Queen moves up into fifth position ahead of SJD. Nicky dropping down to seventh after that contact with Renner, who unfortunately, after looking like he was potentially in the hunt for a race victory, dropped down to eighth. And we'll just double check the race victories. Yeah, so it was a shame that the penalties did decide the race. It was a great battle between Malk and Scott there, heading into the final few laps of that race. Scott will be not best pleased with how that finished. You can see 15 seconds of penalties for Joel there, so might be in trouble with Charlie Whiting. So yeah, Malk picks up the race victory, with Scott in second, Tony Y in third, Humbostone in fourth, Speed Queen in fifth, SJD in sixth, Nicky 9095 in seventh, Renner 9 in eighth, Chill Nyland comes in ninth, with Joel picking up 10th. Delange unfortunately finishes out the points, Mama Fisher down the 12th, and unfortunately we lost Mike earlier in the race. And we'll just check through the incidents for the guys. Quite a few warnings. You can see very easy to corner cut around this track surface, especially through the second sector. And there we go, and you can see Malk utilising that medium to soft tyre strategy perfectly, starting 8th on the grid, stretch those mediums out to lap 16 I believe it was, and then using the soft tyre to really come back. So definitely food for thought for the guys racing in the Performance League 1 and 2 tomorrow night, and the equal performance on Wednesday nights, F1, F2 and F3. So congratulations to Mercedes and to F1 WWFC07, that's Malk, for the race victory today. Commiserations to Scott for unfortunately finishing first on track but losing it on penalties. But congratulations equally to him and Tony for the podium victories, which does promote Scott up into the effective championship lead, with Scopefielder missing out tonight. So Scott will take the race, the championship lead heading into the season break. And Scott moves up onto 40 points. So yeah, he's going to have a 2 or 3 point gap on Speed Queen and Scopefielder as we go to Germany for the first time after our 1 week break next week. But of course, guys, Like I said, this is not the only race of us so far this week. We do have the Performance Leagues 1 and 2 tomorrow night, and on Wednesday we have F1, F2 and F3. So if you'd like to catch up the streams, make sure you check out our Twitter page at Invictus RL, where you'll find all of the stream links, all of the commentator links, to make sure you'll get yourself on board and ready for those races. Equally, if you're watching it and you want to join up with Invictus, go to our website, invictusracingleagues.com, where you can go to the sign up section, where you can speak to any of our admins, any of our drivers, ask them any questions, and we'll be happy to get back to you and get you into the league. And of course, we always like to see new faces driving around with us, and we have spaces in every league going, so make sure if you want to get involved, you let us know as soon as possible. We are going on a season break after this week, so we do have a 1 week season break. So we will be not here next week, but the week after that we'll be here. We will be in Hockenheim for the first German Grand Prix in a long time on the Invictus calendar, and it will be an absolutely classic race, a long straight down into that very tight hairpin around the quite new stadium style circuit that we've seen in the F1 calendar. So the guys definitely looking forward to coming to the German Grand Prix in 2 weeks' time. But for tonight and for me, thank you very much for joining me. It's been good having you in the comments, good having everyone watching the stream. Congratulations to Mount once again, and to Tony and to Scott for picking up the podium at the British Grand Prix of No Assists. Hopefully you will join us in 2 weeks' time in Germany, and we hope you enjoy your week off, and we hope you join us for our streams tomorrow night, Performance 1 and 2. And for me, it's a good night.